So welcome back to the Defiant Spirit. I'm Dr. Baruch Levy, also known as B, and I am joined in my virtual studio with my friend, colleague, and almost permanent resident at the Defiant Spirit now on the podcast, Julie Mouse. Hi, Julie.
Hi there, B. Thanks for having me again.
Thanks for coming back for more four today. Enneagram 4. For those of you who haven't joined us, we've been expanding the space. What does that mean? As my teacher mentor, Viktor Frankl, said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And so Julie and I have been talking about, well, if between stimulus, things happening to us, and our either reacting or responding, there's a space, what's the quality of the space? What kind of space? And as we've been exploring, there isn't a space, there are spaces. And those spaces, many ways to talk about those spaces, we're talking about them from the lens of the Enneagram. 9 different spaces, 9 different types, they're all in us, each one of these types. However, we all have a default space, a default type that we sort of go to when we're on autopilot or when we're in fear. And so we're exploring how to expand that space so we can stop reacting and choose our response. And that brings us to Enneagram 4, the Individualist. There's a lot of names for this one. What are some other names, Julie?
The reformer. The romantic is what I was going to say, or the tragic romantic. The reformer's the one, or the artist.
The artist, the bohemian. It's always this vibe of countercultural, of expressive, creative. I think for me, this is one of the easier types to spot, right? I wouldn't type somebody, but I sense when I'm in the presence of a 4, they just have a uniqueness, which is why in the system that I'm sort of scribing to, they're called the Individualists. I'm not sure it's the best word, but it's a little less loaded than the romantic, right? We start going down a path of, no, it's not romantic in the sense of romance per se, but romantic in the sense of, and I think you're right, Julie, there's an idealism, right? 1's for the reformer, 4's the individualist, and 7, the enthusiast, are the idealist triad. There's an idealism, and that's the romanticism, like a perfect, not the one we've already talked about is more of a perfection. This is more of a longing for an ideal.
Yeah, exactly.
What else do you say about the 4?
Well, what I love about 4s, and I feel like our culture doesn't support 4s being out in the world more, because we need to see the world the way they do more, just the way they see the beauty. And sometimes this longing can make them feel like they don't fit in, or there's something missing in them, when in actuality, it makes them see a better way things could be, and this like beauty that exists that many of us are so caught up in our personality traps that we don't see. And I heard someone say this recently, like, we need you 4s to step up and help us see what you see.
It's easy for us to say, but when you've created an ecosystem that doesn't encourage them to step up or step out, it takes a lot of courage. You know, I was listening to Susan Cain, who wrote the book Quiet. And then she wrote another book recently called Melancholy. And those are both 4-ish books, especially Melancholy, because I think it was called Melancholy, or something like that. And it's all, and she's a self-avowed 4, she said. So, but melancholy is something that we medicate, that we put as a dark emotion, that I grew up in a home where there was melancholy to the point where it became depression, and those aren't the same thing. But we didn't talk about the melancholy before it became depression, and we certainly didn't talk about the depression.
Yeah, where 4s are just really comfortable talking about melancholy, that bittersweet quality in life.
That's what it was called, yes.
And because I tend to be in that toxic positivity group is a 9, there was a long time where I didn't understand 4s, where I'd be like, why are you like that? Or how could you even be that way? And as a mindfulness teacher, I have completely flipped that, where now when I see a 4 being over emotional, like a soup, they tend to have really big highs and really big lows that are a little uncomfortable for me. And that's not their problem, that's my problem. And in fact, one way we can help 4s bring that out and find their center is to not blame them when they're overwhelming you because they're being who they are. And I've taken that on as one of my practices. When I see someone who's over emoting, I can feel this discomfort because I like things to stay positive. And if I can just breathe and let them be who they are and not judge them, it's such a good practice for me to, nines tend to enmesh in other people. So instead of doing that, if I can stay in my own space and allow them, that actually helps them ground a little bit.
And it's interesting that you are a 9 and you're describing it, because 9s and 4s can have a similar pulling back or withdrawing energy. So that's the
Mhm.
Susan Cain's book, Quiet, where you intersect. Bittersweet is where you diverge, because
Mhm.
the 9s aren't necessarily comfortable, at least in reaction, with feeling.
Mhm.
Even though people like almost describe them like they're the feeling triad, 9s aren't. They're a body, they're a gut. I'm in gut type 2, I'm an 8. So we're not comfortable naturally in feeling. 4s navigate the world through feeling. It's like a
Mhm.
bat uses sonar, a 4 uses emotion. And I
Mhm.
know that firsthand because I'm married to one and I'm raising one of my kids as a 4. And they both go to an emotional way of sort of feeling their way through a situation that I'm also uncomfortable with it. And I also find myself trying to control or contain it.
Mhm.
And I've also had to learn the hard way how to make room for it
Yeah, and maybe even they have something to teach us.
and learn from it.
Right,
Right?
right.
4s feel their heart. They feel their, my Ariella always says this, and it sounds like the most obvious thing in the world, but she'll say to me, B, because I'll go into action. That's what 8s do. So I'll
Mhm.
just be angry and I'll do, she says, feel your feelings. Like,
Mhm.
can you think of like a more simplistic statement? And yet the truth is in that I'm not feeling my feelings. I'm acting my feelings.
Mhm.
4s
Right.
feel, now 4s are not like perfect. They need to act to get out of feeling, but starting with their superpower, they know how to feel their feelings.
Yeah. So, and that's where I really relate to fours is that I need to act like I also am acting repressed, and why they call us the sloth, because we sometimes can't see what we need to do, and it's actually we need to get into doing. And so just like a four, when they're experiencing their highs and lows and just trying to think about them and process these feelings and just kind of wallow in them, or what I've heard some people call it like ruminate, they can tend to rumination and just get stuck in that. If they can just go act and just get into their body, and again, I'll bring the mindfulness piece on board. If they can catch themselves like, oh, I'm in one of those highs, and just pause for a moment, just literally just stop, bring it down just a notch. They can maybe bring the thinking on board that can help them see what they need to do. And it's usually something physical so that they can figure out what to do with this feeling and thinking that they have going on.
So it's such a beautiful type. I think of did you ever see the movie The Green Mile?
Yes.
You
Great
know,
movie.
the guy, the big guy in it who's persecuted.
Yes.
He absorbs people's pain,
Hmm.
right? And he makes them, he pays a price.
Right.
Right? He
Hmm.
suffers, and so I see this with 4s. Ariella, she's a healer. She absorbs people's pain and suffering. Now, as a professional, she's had to learn how to set up boundaries so that she doesn't take it home with her, so to speak. But
Hmm.
I see with my 12-year-old, who's a 4, he hasn't learned those boundaries. So he'll come home from class suffering, and I'll talk to him, and it takes me like 5 minutes to figure out this didn't happen to him. It happened to somebody else. The fancy word for it in psychology or in the Enneagram is called introjection. And that is
Hmm.
what, simply put, what I call fishing for suffering. They
Hmm.
go to class, they cast out their line, they hook some suffering, they reel it in, they make it their own, and then they start losing the distinction. Is this mine or is this somebody else's? And so halfway through the conversation, I'll be like, Aviv, this didn't even happen to you. He's like, I know it happened to them. I'm like, then why are you suffering? He's like, because I'm a 4. And by the way,
Yeah, right.
he loves the Enneagram.
Yeah. This friend of mine says she just finds herself like ruminating on these topics, and at some point she realized they're just stories and some of them aren't even true, but she just can't help hashing them. Have you heard that expression, fours don't have feelings, they are feelings?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's so right.
Yeah.
And there's a Talmudic or a Kabbalistic saying that says, what is truer than the truth? The story we tell about the truth.
Yeah.
So facts aren't relevant in that. The story we're telling about the facts become our reality. And for
Mhm.
this, look, this is why fours are they're artists. There's so many artists who are fours. I think
Mhm.
if you're a deep brooding artist, quite likely you're a four, because they tell the story of what the rest of us just see as the facts.
Right. Right. And, I know I've been talking about mindfulness with each number, but specifically, I see it so strongly in the four that if they can learn that magic of the literal magic of the pause, because when they pause and they can rein in this this longing, this only seeing what's missing, this kind of ruminating we're talking about, and all of a sudden, pause in that they can see this beauty and bring this beauty to the world just effortlessly. I was talking to this friend of mine, and she must have related. I was asking her about being a four, and she must have related in our half-hour conversation like four stories about just naturally connecting with people in the grocery store, in the elevator, on an airplane. They just have this natural relational field that when they're not caught in like envy and longing and what's missing, it just flows out of them. And we all need it and feel it.
And that's a gift of the heart triad because twos do the same thing. Twos put their attention more on you, your needs, your feelings. They're not always good at sifting through their own. Fours are so good at knowing their feelings and sharing them that it's an intimacy. They just have a natural, Wayne Dyer, into me see. And fours see themselves and they let other people in to be seen, to see them.
Yeah, I think sometimes people can judge because their vice is envy, that they're jealous. And really it's more just this focus on what's missing in them, not that they're not jealous. They're just when they see something, it makes them notice what's missing in them. And when they're able to let that go and just see their own unique quality, they also want everyone else, they want to bring out everyone's unique quality. They're not jealous. They don't want people to not be as good as them. They actually, I think, are naturals at showing people their own uniqueness.
So let's distinguish, it's there's a difference between jealousy and envy. And I think
Yes.
what people are thinking is jealousy. I want what you have. It's not I want what you have. It's desire. Our words are limited, but it's a desire. In Hebrew it's called cheshek, but it's like this burning desire of I'm like you described. I'm missing something, and if I just had that, I wouldn't burn so hot, feel so
Mhm.
lonely, feel so much suffering. As a case in point, I think of like a Michael Jackson, who like it just there was this missing desire, always a longing, and you could just watch the man change over time, trying to find that missing piece, and your heart starts breaking when you see a four who crumbles under the pressure or the suffering that they've just put on themselves. By
Mhm.
the way, why there are so many four artists who end up taking their lives. If you
Yeah,
look
so
at
back again to why I think mindfulness is such a beautiful, powerful practice for fours, because that high is part of their beauty. But if they don't catch that high or those depths of despair that they go to, if they can't catch them and pause, then we don't get to see that gift for the world because they're just kind of wallowing in that.
and they can crumble under or be crushed under the weight of that darkness.
Yeah,
I was
and
told that
I
yeah,
think they get judged a lot by other people because they are intense. They are a little high maintenance, and
yeah.
they don't want to just have surface relationships. And so it takes time if you want to be in a relationship with a four.
Um, and along those lines, Viktor Frankl, my teacher, is probably a four. Out of the Holocaust, wife murdered, unborn child murdered, parents murdered, brother murdered, family murdered, 4 years incarceration, etc. And his mantra was, I am here to transform tragedy into triumph.
Mm,
And the inspiration that comes from those who are willing to face and embrace and transform suffering into something meaningful is I think, the ultimate human expression. And that
yeah,
is it.
right.
That's 4 at
Yeah.
their best.
Yeah. Um, this friend that I mentioned I was talking to, she told the story of being on an airplane and there was a lot of turbulence, and she just sensed that the person in front of her was about to have a panic attack. She
Mhm.
goes, "I don't know what came over me. I just reached through and put my hand on her shoulder." And I'm like, "Wow, I would never do that."
As a 9?
Yeah. And, I'd be worried about how they'd react, and she just felt that this person needed a little grounding, and she was able to give that.
That's a really great example of just, but that's that empathic piece.
Yeah,
Feel.
right.
I can feel your feelings. Now, again, the work is oftentimes in the blessing and the curse and making
Mhm,
sure. And so standing guard against, is it mine? Is
mhm,
this my, or am I overstepping a bound in
mhm,
that is not mine, and it's not mine to take on right now. I don't have to watch Sally Struthers on TV and Africa children starving, and then it takes me down a hole, and then by the end of the day, because I watched that infomercial, and you have to stand guard against taking on the world's suffering and take on what's yours and discern. And there's an act, and that's
mhm,
why there's a line between 4 and 1: discernment,
mhm.
boundaries, borders, structure.
Yeah, and the structure and discipline. The same friend talked about this. She was a PTA president of her school, and I
Mhm.
loved this because she talked about how going to those meetings every week was the heartbeat of her week. And all I could think of was, wow, that's such a great description of how when fours have discipline and something structured, it actually grounds them into their best self.
Absolutely. That's really powerful. So, Enneagram 4 as the sort of creative, the expressive, here to, I think of the fours as here to give voice, right, to the thing that we all can kind of touch and taste and feel, but we can't quite articulate.
Mhm,
And they have this power. Ariella does this all the time, where she'll name experiences that I'm feeling, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it.
mhm.
What a power.
Yeah, it
And
is.
also, by the way, I have 4 kids. I see it in my youngest in ways I don't see it in his siblings who are 10 he's 12. His oldest sibling is 21.
Mhm.
He sounds like he's sometimes 70.
Yeah, right. Especially if there's some other people in the family that need a little bit of that heart.
Yeah, like, because his siblings are all gut types, 8,
Mm,
9, and 1. And
mhm.
so they look at him like he's almost a foreigner, speaking a foreign language.
Because he is.
But he is, which is not coincidence that he's in a he's a dancer.
Mhm,
Like, he struggles on the playground at his old schools when they pick up the bat and the balls, because that's a rougher culture. What he likes is to express, and he doesn't. I mean, I played sports. You can express yourself, but he always had a hard time accessing his emotion in those playground games or those playground conversations. But I
mhm.
also see that as a curse, right?
Mhm.
Because the world can't live in depth
Yeah.
indefinitely.
I find when I've worked with parents who have fours that learning about fours is so helpful that there's not something wrong with them because they don't fit into this three culture we live in. And if anything, again, they just want to be seen. And so try and figure out what it is that is their calling or is their expressiveness, like you were saying with your son, as opposed to like, why can't you fit in with what all the other kids are doing your age? See it as his gift. And the more they figure that out, the more they'll find their gift to the world.
Well, think about how many young fours, didn't have a parent or somebody in their life to support and nurture that. We just watched Billy Elliot. We had said
Oh,
it before,
oh, great movie, yeah.
right? I mean, like a culture. There's no judgment. Different time, different place. We do the best we can where we are with what we have.
Mhm,
But my son, raised by my great grandfather, who came here from the old country, would have been squashed.
mhm,
I'm not saying I'm the great parent, and I am not saying we live in a different era where, like, there is a place called here in town, DSA, the Denver School of Arts, and there is a pathway for a young boy to express himself in this mode. And
mhm,
it is not completely accepted, but certainly more accepted. But just thinking about all the context and all of the people and all the things that have to be around a four to support them, or else they won't be seen.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, just allowing them to express their emotion and then encouraging them, again, back to that mindfulness thing, to find that middle ground. You got this. You when it gets really high, you need to pause. Maybe you need to go for a walk, do something physical, and so that you can bring it down to that middle ground where your natural sense of equanimity, which the fours, that's their virtue, this sense of being okay with everything and being in that middle ground just comes out of them.
And I'm no, like I said before, I don't want to paint myself as a perfect parent. So here's an example of I've had to learn. I wouldn't yell at my son when he get in the car, but when he would start going down this path of talking about all these kids suffering, I would say something to the fact of get over it, right?
Mm.
Deal with it. Like pick yourself up, dust yourself off, move on. So that's me trying to impose my three-ish culture on him, my eight-ish culture
Mm.
on him. And what
And
I
trying to protect him because that's what the society's gonna do to him.
and try to protect him
Yeah,
and also help him regulate,
yeah.
right? But what I've had to learn to do, and Ariel has taught me this after 24 years, I'm starting to, is put the imaginary garbage can in front of him and say, "Is there anything else? Is there anything else?" It's probably say it nicer than that eight-ish sound, and letting him emotionally vomit because once it's out, he doesn't have to carry it with him anymore.
Yeah,
So I've had to learn how to adapt to his world and bring him along into my world.
yeah, just giving him the opportunity to let it all out somewhere safe with his dad so that he can then regulate himself back to
Because it
center.
doesn't go away. Like for me, it's like, why doesn't this go away? And I can't explain, but it doesn't.
Well, and all the 4 wants is to be seen, right? They want you to see them. So if you sat there and just let him vomit all that down, all of a sudden he's like, "Okay, I've been seen. Whew, now I can bring this down and be my equanimous self."
And again, challenging yourself if you're listening to this as a four, that you know, facts sometimes are what they are, and feelings aren't always the defining factor in things. And so finding that balance between, kind of a harder, colder truth, reality, facts, and feelings, and finding a counterbalance for that, because otherwise feelings can run rampant and, cause havoc, just like the absence of feelings can do it.
Mhm. Right, right. So, I mean, that's again where I just think some mindfulness skills of learning that pause is really invaluable for fours in order to regulate these highs and lows that are just part of being a four.
So that's a good segue into let's offer some mindfulness strategies, and you'll take us through the experience for four. And if you're listening, it's not that you have to be a four to benefit from this, because as an example, I act like an eight, but my whole type, some people call it the tri-type, is I act like a eight, I feel like a four.
Hmm.
Julie, I'm guessing you feel like a two or a four.
Two. Yeah.
Two. So, but if Julie shows me how she sort of rank orders her strategies, four's in there,
Hmm.
right? Four's in all of us. So as you're listening to this, really put yourself into the four. It may speak to your core type. It may speak to your whole type. It may just speak to you as a human being navigating the world with a little bit of four in you.
Yeah. Right.
So with that, we'll go into our meditation. And as I've been expanding the space with all of them, we start with that idea, pausing for a moment. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our happiness. This is expanding the space for Enneagram 4, the individualist.
So let's start by just taking 2 deeper than normal breaths. And as you exhale, roll your shoulders back and down. And then bring your attention to the bottom of your feet. Start our mindfulness practice here as far away from our head as we can to disconnect from the constant thinking mind. What sensations do you notice on your feet? Maybe the contact with the floor, sense of temperature, or tingling. And when distractions bring your attention away, either thoughts, sounds, body sensations. Just notice when that happens. And without judgment, bring your attention back to your feet. What are you noticing now? Maybe on the sole of the foot, or the top, or the toes. And now moving your awareness to your hands. Feel the contact of the hands with your legs or wherever they're placed, maybe with each other. Again, noticing sensation. So, not thinking about your hands, but feeling the sensations that are there. And these simple practices of bringing your attention to your body, like the hands and the feet, can be super helpful for fours to bring that head, that body intelligence on board. And at the end of your next exhale, release your attention from your hands. We're going to bring our awareness to your breath. And for this practice, we're going to use an ujjayi breath, which is often used in yoga, but bringing a little more physical awareness to the breath can be helpful for fours. Again, bringing that body awareness online. So bring in some constriction to the back of your throat. And so that when you breathe in, there's actually a little bit of an audible sound. And then keep that constriction as you breathe out. And again, there's an audible sound. It's almost as if when you blow with your breath on a window pane to make a fog, except that your mouth is closed. So breathing with this constriction, it's called ujjayi breath. You might notice a little sound. It just brings a little more subtle awareness of the breath. On your next exhale, release the ujjayi breath and just breathe normally. And bring to mind another person in your life. So we're shifting from the breath to your mind and imagining. So bring them to mind a person who has something you wish you had, whether it's something physical about them, something professional about what they do, something relationship wise that they have that you don't have, or maybe a lifestyle they have that you don't have. So bring one of those to mind, picturing it. Maybe noticing any emotions that arise when you think of that. And then see if you can bring a curiosity to how your body feels as a result of thinking that. So keeping that image in your mind, but bring your awareness to maybe your torso area. And where are you noticing that that emotion is landing in your body? For fours, there's often a deep in their gut feeling, almost like hardly manage the emotion. Even in the digestive system sometimes. Not trying to change it or get rid of it. We're actually trying to get to know what our body does in reaction to these thoughts. So maybe toggle back and forth between that image of this person that has something you wish you had to how is my body reacting to thinking about that? And just being with that sensation, with what I call loving awareness. Oh, that's what happens when I think those thoughts. And as you're ready, releasing that image and bringing your focus back to your Ujjayi breath. So back to the constriction in the back of your throat. And so you find yourself moving away from the head and the gut and back to your throat. Constricted and noticing each inhale, following it with your attention, noticing the pause, and then following the exhale. And sometimes when we've done an exercise like this, your attention will be pulled back to that image. Just notice that. That's not a problem. It's just a habit. See if each time it happens, you can bring your attention back to the next breath. Maybe listening to the audible sound. And on the next exhale, releasing your attention to the breath and releasing the Ujjayi breath. And take a moment to go back to that place in your gut or in your body that you were feeling a reaction to the image and see if that's shifted at all. And then as you're ready, you can relax your posture, maybe open your eyes if they're closed. And just take a moment to reflect on what happened there because the value of these mindfulness practices is just getting to know what happens when we're gripped by something that causes reaction in us, because I mean we can just stay in loving awareness with that sensation. So whatever sensation arose for you, that's your work, is staying with that sensation, bringing your awareness, because that's what causes you to go to that place of envy or go to that place of wallowing and longing, and then the world misses your gift. So the mindfulness practice, and then for I use the Ojjayi breath for a 4 because bringing things to physical, like bringing into your body, is really helpful. So it could be just to your hands, your feet, but something in your body to help ground you when that sensation in your torso is telling you, oh, I'm in that space that's not my healthy space.
Thank you so much. Yeah, as you're saying that, it's a good segue to next conversation on 5, because 4 and 5 are at the bottom of the Enneagram for a reason. It's the darker, thicker emotions, right? The denser stuff, and 5s can end up living their life in their head. 4s can live their life in their emotions. So they both
Mhm.
tangible, practical ways back out into the world. So this is
Yeah,
incredibly helpful.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that's probably a good place to end, as I'm kind of choking here.
Yeah.
Any final words?
No, I I appreciate all the 4s out there who are trying to help us see the world a little differently, and keep up the good fight. The culture needs you.
And thank you for helping us feel our feelings.
Yeah.
And so with that, we will talk to you next time, or see you next time, as we explore, of course, after 4 comes 5, Enneagram 5, the investigator. Until the next time, defy your number, live your spirit. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.